This week it's two boys in a Mustang convertible. Normally we'd be doing intros outside, and I know it looks nice and bright and sunny, but it has been severely raining apocalyptically for the last week. We're in this Mustang, this acid yellow, banana coloured Mustang. It's quite fabulous, and with the roof down it's brilliant. This interior is delightfully retro. It's got modern touches. It's got this full width dash, which is not as configurable as some of the ones we've driven, David.
You have trouble with these little switches.
So I've got my phone in here so that I can use the USB for the Apple CarPlay on this Sync 3 system. Now this isn't Ford's latest system, that's coming out in the newer models. The centre dash is, again, as I said, delightfully old-fashioned, but it's intentionally so, it's retro. But is it, David, a pastiche? I'm not sure. And it's clearly zoned. There's the business down the bottom, climate and audio.
Clearly zoned though, the toggle switches. You had trouble with that.
Yeah, well, there's the switch here for the mode selection for the drive controls. And this is a little bit unusual. Next to it is the steering, and that tells you just how much toughness you want in your steering. And next to it is traction control. But David, look what happens. If you're accidentally putting something in here, as I did, the traction control turns off. Now I've got my Navman plugged in here, which leaves absolutely no space in there. So my phone's just sort of just sitting in there rather annoyingly. It's I don't know, it's not quite right. Now, as far as putting it into sport mode goes, that's a whole other thing. That one pullback puts it into sport mode, which actually then gives you additional modes up here on the dash. But there's no normal in there, and there's no normal until you go back to drive, and then you can go through all of these again and you find normal. Why don't we get on the road? That 10 speed is quite insistent.
But again, you felt the thump of the gears every time.
Oh, I don't mind that. I don't mind a bit of a thump of gears, David, if it's doing it when I want to do it. And this seems to be not too bad at that.
Well, I don't like it pounding.
The thing is, although this chassis does feel not the tightest one in the world, going around these bends, now you took it on the way up, it's not too bad, and the steering in sport mode has almost some feel, but not quite. So that's the gears, it's doing that all by itself. It's slamming down. It's saying, David, I want a lower gear. This one, it's holding gears all by itself. I'm not interfering with this in any way. And it's got 10 gears to choose from, and I'm in third. And I think this 4-cylinder has quite a nice sound. But do you think it has a little hint of 60s sports car in it?
Well, it's rough.
No, I mean this raspy sound that is not exactly what I'd call visceral. It's not like a V8, that deep rumbling in your inner sanctum, but it does feel quite, it's pleasingly buzzy. And at low speed, cruising through car parks with the roof down, you can hear the spin of the turbo in this 2.3 litre 4-cylinder.
Look, I think it does remarkably well, and the purists are horrified to think of a Mustang with 4 cylinders in it.
But of course, David, Mustangs way back to the 60s had 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder models. The Mustang story starts with a man called Lee Iacocca, a Ford executive who thought that a Ford sports car was needed, and after a couple of concept models, in 1964 the original Mustang was released. Several pre-production versions were taken around the country and set up in Ford dealerships for display purposes only. Enter Captain Stanley Tucker, who spotted this car and wanted it right or wrong. And a salesman, Harry Phillips, who eventually, after much cajoling, sold the car to Stanley Tucker. Ford eventually realised this horrific mistake, and after 2 years of cajoling, finally got Captain Tucker out of his pre-production Mustang and into a 1966 model with all the bells and whistles. It just happened to be the 1 millionth Mustang produced. Those early Mustangs had smaller engines of 2.8 litres up through 3.3, 4.3 and 4.7, with the top model having a massive 202 kilowatts, still substantially short of the 2.3 litre unit we're driving today. With all of the Mustangs coming in both a convertible and a coupe version. Some of the Mustangs in between were so awful they didn't deserve the Mustang name. Frankly, they were just absolutely horrible. But then there was a revival with several famous movie car chases, including one in the Bond series, and of course the famous Bullet. That leads us up to the newer versions of Mustang, with some astonishing power figures. And of course with the great Carroll Shelby being involved over many years with Ford, there was a Shelby model as well. And in 2020, the Shelby GT500 produced a massive 567 kilowatts. That was discontinued after a short while, with the Mark I making a reintroduction after 17 years. And that brings us up to the new models.
All right.
Now, David, I don't think that is much to complain about. That was brisk. I'd describe it as frisky. I'd describe that as plenty. Now it's 236 kilowatts.
Yeah, it's the high performance, which means it's the lowest horsepower. The GT, which is the V8, has about 100 more kilowatts and 100 more newton meters.
Yeah.
This has, 448 newton meters of torque and 236 kilowatts.
Internal combustion engines are on their way out. And, you know, we're in the twilight years of fossil fuels. So things like this are really important. The amount of enjoyment is important. And oddly, when motoring first started, you had to get your fuel at places like chemists and so forth in a can. And I think it's probably going to end the same way. And you'll need to keep a supply of fuel for your classic car somewhere close by handy, because you won't be able to get it at petrol stations. They'll all be converted to electric. Now, we are on the freeway. I do have the active lane control on, but it is just lane departure. It's not, let's just say, as effective as other cars we've encountered. I'm now going to switch cruise control on, take it up to 110. Now it'll gradually increase to 110, David, and there it will stop. Now the reason we've got the roof up is because when we're on the way up to our location, we were a little afraid that all of a sudden it was going to start raining, and it did. So it's just too much of a kerfuffle. The other thing is, this has a slightly dodgy rear window, which got David...
It isn't like the old ones, isn't it, Alan?
It is very much. Anyone that's driven an old convertible, 20, 30 years old, knows that the roof and the windows always give you strife of some kind. We're now entering a tunnel, so the lights will come on automatically eventually. Yes, they're now on. And the dashboard gradually dimmed. One thing I wanted to point out was we are in a tunnel, and the noise coming through the roof is quite substantial.
It's also a concrete road.
About 4 o'clock. About 4 o'clock, David.
One of the lovely things about a convertible is travelling gently, I think, through the countryside and getting not only the sounds but also the smell. As you go past a nice pasture, you get the smell of the grass and
poo
and horse poo. Yeah, go past a horse stall.
Now we're in the city. This feels in normal mode fairly unspirited. But of course they do that, David, for economy. It's promised to be 9.5 or 9.8 litres per 100 kilometres combined. I've been getting a little more than that this week.
A little better. Yeah,
So a little better, yeah.
Yeah, so
a little,
I think you're doing 9.1 or something.
Yeah, I meant more economical.
Yes.
I know that didn't come out that way. But you know, at the end of the day, you always have to apologise for it being a 4-cylinder.
I think if you get a V8, you get a little bit more into American graffiti mode.
You do, but David, it's come time. It's come time again.
Okay.
So hit like.
Or make a comment.
And anywhere at all to subscribe. I'll see where the little round button fits.